You're listening to the Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Last Call, where Kevin, Wendy, and Brent talk about anything and everything that couldn't quite squeeze into the regular show. Today we talk about iZombie, Game of Thrones, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, The Almighty Johnsons, Person of Interest, Penny Dreadful, Salem, and Continuum.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Let's get started with what Brent's got on his list.
A couple things to talk about. First of all, we got a link to a fun video for me. I'm a fan of the online gaming comedy group called Achievement Hunter, which is a division of Rooster Teeth, and I've talked about Rooster Teeth before, doing the Laser Team movie and so forth, the crowd-sourced movie. But they have a Let's Play, which is a gaming thing, where they're playing the Left 4 Dead zombie game with Raul Coley, who plays Ravi on iZombie. And they were down in L.A., and they paired up with him, and they started playing this game. And they talk a bit about iZombie and about his experiences and so forth. But it's mostly just a couple, four guys getting together and playing a video game and having a lot of fun doing it. So it's like 20, 30 minutes of video. If you are at all interested, if you're at all interested in him or just seeing what this game is about or anything of that nature, it's worth checking out. I loved it.
This does sound like fun. It was great when he was a guest on the iZombie podcast because he was talking quite a bit about being a gamer and his love for that and everything. So this was great to see it in action.
Oh, that's cool. It's always fun to see people sort of super nerding out, which makes me actually wonder tangentially, have you guys seen the ads for Zachary Levi's show Nerdolution, or I think that's what it's called, right? Or Geeks with Drinks or something like that, which kind of makes me feel like it has sort of the same tone where it's geeky actors interacting with nerds.
Yeah, I had seen the ads, and yeah, you're right. The videos like this are very similar. Their gameplay is kind of a background thing, and it's just guys, talking about crud with each other.
Yeah, the Geeks Who Drink show is coming in the mid-July, that SciFi one, and that's one of those ones that could either be a ton of fun for just that reason, as Brent said, it's going to be people just geeking out about things we all identify with, or it's going to be a little too produced and forced chat that doesn't really work. We'll have to wait to see. But yeah, I've seen those ads, and I must say, get some geeks together, give them a shot or two to drink, and then have some fun with questions. It could be okay.
Well, to me, it looks like they have enough built into the structure with it being a game that you're going to get a lot of unpredictable results. And usually when you loosen people up with alcohol, that also gives some unpredictable things versus sort of creating manufactured drama, which happens. It seems like the game itself might generate all the sort of out of nowhere kinds of fun stuff.
Yep. Also, I've got a link to Graham Norton show. If you're a fan of that, a few days after you hear this podcast, or possibly a couple days after you hear this podcast, you'll probably see an episode with Emilia Clarke, who plays Khaleesi on Game of Thrones, and also is the new Sarah Connor in the new Terminator movie. And she's on the couch with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and this video is pretty cool because she does talk a bit about Game of Thrones and about her role. And there's also some other videos related to this. If you go to this one, where you'll see her, doing some eyebrow stuff, and which is pretty funny. And Arnold awarding her as the winner of the best eyebrows. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, the only downside, I didn't see any discussion of her role in the SciFi original movie Triassic Attack.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Kevin.
It was like her first film role where she was a lot younger, playing like a petulant teenager with dinosaur things running around. I'm sure not a highlight considering what height she's risen to now, but that'll be me always going, I remember when.
That's funny. Well, this was a press tour for Terminator, so I'm sure that was why Graham stuck to that as the primary thing. But, Game of Thrones, especially because of the recent finale, I expected questions about that too. I thought it was absolutely hilarious when she was telling the story about Jason Momoa, who played Khal Drogo, and her comments very much lined up with the comments the showrunners made on a YouTube video I was watching. They were at some college in England, and they were asked which characters or actors would they most want to try to bring back to the show or the set, and they both said they want to bring Jason Momoa back in any way possible. It was partially why they created a scene in season 2 that included him, was because he was so much fun. He's so funny. They're like, we wanted to create any opportunity to bring him back. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and she did comment on that, on him, and also, as you said, on the finale and how many things happen. Let's put it that way. All right, I also want to talk just a little bit about Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, episode 1 of this miniseries, The Friends of English Magic. I really enjoyed it. I mean, Wendy talked about in the main show about it being a period piece, but we talked about the pacing being pretty high, and it was, and we jumped right into the story, and I just really latched onto these characters. I didn't need much explanation. This group of people who get together and celebrate magic, but they're only really talking about magic and they don't want to do it. And you get the others who come in and say, well, why aren't we doing it anymore? And then Norrell comes in and actually demonstrates real magic by making all these statues come to life and freaking everybody out after they've signed an agreement that if he can do magic, that they would disband and no longer talk about magic, and all but one of them do that. So I didn't need any introduction about who these people were. I just immediately rolled with the story, and it all made sense, and I just loved it. And Norrell having, apparently being a self-taught magician, he has found actual magic books and has actually taught himself how to do magic, real magic. But it looks like there's some people out there, some forces that might be involved in some real magic as well, and may not necessarily like that he's doing this. So I'm very curious to see where this particular miniseries goes. It looks pretty interesting.
Well, that's good to hear. Like I said, it's way back on my radar, but I'm looking forward to a few eps in what you folks think, if it's worth, like I said, putting in the list of shows to watch once some other stuff settles down.
I really liked the character introduction of Mr. Norrell. He's a weird guy in a very, I got a very Doctor Who kind of a vibe. Not the same as Doctor Who, but he's as complicated as Doctor Who is. He is perfectly content to be in York with his massive library, but then he really wants to help with the war. And he's thinking about maybe people are finally ready to start accepting that magic can be a tool. And then he goes to what I assume was supposed to be Parliament, and the politicians are, he gets nothing there. And he's very uncomfortable when he has to take a house in London, and his assistant keeps telling him, look, you got to work the whole popularity and social culture here. They're going to create the momentum for the politicians to then accept your help. And I liked that whole aspect of it. I thought they built a very detailed world around him. Magic is really interesting because you do have the people who are pretty much doing it as an amusement or as a fad. It's in a time in which science isn't very advanced, so everything can be magic, possibly. But I loved how he never lets anyone see him work these spells. What I really liked when he made all the statues come to life in York Minster, and they're all confessing and they're all saying all these horrible things, but then you have the one statue of the woman playing the harp, and she's singing this beautiful music, and he's got a very different worldview than all these other characters. So I like that about him a lot. And we also have this bigger arc being set up with this, quote, prophecy that there's going to be 2 magicians to come forward. And the implication is the other one is the Jonathan Strange character, who is kind of a screw up. He's in love with this woman who keeps telling him, you don't really have a function in life. You need to get a mission. So I think that'll be interesting once you get those 2 characters to actually meet, to see how they interact, as well as the bigger story. It was really interesting at the very end when he goes to prove to the politician that his magic is legit by resurrecting his dead fiance. And so, Brent, was your interpretation that the thing that came to help him was a fairy? That was my interpretation. But I liked how it set up a lot of the things we normally expect. Magic always comes with an untold consequence that's going to boomerang on you. But I also liked the street magician and how he was sort of this wild card with what he was saying to Mr. Norrell about, the quote prophecy and the return of the three-eyed raven king or whatever he called him. So I liked a lot of the stuff that it was setting up, and I liked the characters we met.
Yeah, the guy there at the resurrection was pretty cool. I think in their terms they would call him a fairy. In our terms, I immediately thought he was a demon of some sort.
Yeah, I thought he was a fairy because Mr. Norrell talked about fairies.
Right.
When he was sort of clarifying to that woman. I love how he's playing it straight. So whenever anyone asks him a question that's sort of mocking, he just answers it straight. It's like, oh no, you never want to deal with fairies, and they're nothing like the bugs. So I enjoyed it a lot.
I did as well. All right. I also briefly wanted to mention the Almighty Johnsons on our rewatch, just because there were a couple of important things that happened this episode. First of all, you get Loki very upset that Ty is selling the house that he and Loki's daughter had been given, but the will clearly said that he would become the owner. And then, of course, Loki comes by and says, well, I did tell my daughter to buy insurance, and she never did, and whoops, there's a fire. Whoops, there's a fire. And he burns down Ty's house, which is a pretty cruel, nasty thing for him to do. But he doesn't seem to care. He's washed his hands, as he says, of Ty, and now at this point, since he's not a god, he's a traitor, as Loki says. But we get an interesting thing with Anders as Axel's up on the drunk in his underwear and trying to tell the world that they're all gods, where it looks like Anders' power has been amplified intensely for some reason. He's able to convince an entire crowd of people to basically do what he says, including, wave your hands like you just don't care. So we get a lot of, or a couple of interesting developments, let's put it that way, in this one, because now Ty and the female Oracle have moved in, where, Gaia has left, in the flat. So they're setting some things up.
Yeah, it wasn't like a wow me episode, but like you said, knowing how we're setting some things up to see where they're going to go was good to see that, very much in place. You've got me very attuned to watch what's happening with Ty and Dawn every episode, so I'm kind of waiting to see each time something happens or doesn't happen, which is kind of fun. And, seeing the guys have to do their whole discussion about what this means and trying to get him out of his funk, it was entertaining, just not the greatest episode.
Well, this is Axel at his lowest point. He's lacking purpose. So there was some fun comedic aspects to that when he's sitting around in his underwear and he's complaining about bathing every day to the potential roommates and stuff. But it turned very serious at the end when you pointed out, Brent, he's up on the roof and the people in the crowd are almost egging him to jump, and Anders is able to stop all that. So I'm glad they kind of had this episode so that we can move on from the Gaia problem, or at least put it in a place so that the rest of the story can keep going. And it is going to be interesting to see what happens with the Oracle as their other roommate. I agree.
And my heart really sank, and I'm sure yours did too, Wendy, when Ty had to realize that the other courier was apparently dating Dawn.
Yeah, but we know she has horrible taste in men, so he's not going to pan out.
And that's it for me.
Okay, Kevin.
All righty, just 2 items for me this week. I just wanted to catch folks up to let them know I'm proceeding on my Person of Interest watch. I'm now up through Season 2, Episode number 20. Now, for those who've asked, and I do appreciate it, certainly on social media, at Brent's suggestion, this is I started off with a bit of abbreviated viewing, just a couple of episodes early in Season 1, a couple late, a couple early in Season 2, and then I jumped to Episode 16 of Season 2, and from here on out, I'll be watching each episode. So I've watched 8 or 9, several since the last time I brought it up. Things are certainly falling in place. The show is, as many of you know, very enjoyable, very well done. So I'm appreciating as I'm seeing some different characters start to get a little more involved in the bigger story and have some fun each time they have to deal with whatever number comes up and how they're approaching it. So I'm digging the show. It's a nice show for me to fill in here, certainly during the summer, as have some time and I want to catch something where I don't have to be seriously deep into it or taking notes like some of the other things we'll be talking about. And so I'm enjoying it, and it's nice. I've got my discs lined up from Netflix, and it's a fun bit. And I think I'm just getting ready to have a lot more cool stuff happen. So I'll see where we're at come a couple of weeks' time when I can finish up with season 2.
So how much of season 2 did you actually watch, Kevin?
I watched the first 2 episodes and then went to episode 16. So I've got about 5 of them under my belt at this point.
So I'll be curious, assuming I get a chance to do a rewatch at some point, if you, after you get into like season 3, if you recommend going back to watch more of season 2 to get more backstory, or if you thought that was enough.
Brent and Scott on Cape Cod have been both very helpful on a couple of items where I realized I'm a little thin on details. Brent's got some nice info we'll probably package up at some point if this keeps going well. For other folks who want to go with the abbreviated start, so to speak, as I'm calling it. But as a matter of fact, I was asking him one specific question before we started recording that I had a little knowledge on, and he explained a little more. I'm like, okay, now it makes sense.
Yeah, it's I'm glad you're enjoying it. I hope you can stay with it for a little while longer. I know that it's still mostly procedural. There's big elements of genre in there that you've been seeing so far at this point. But by later in season 3 and season 4 especially, it's just, oh my gosh, big time genre show. The procedural stuff kind of drifts away. So if that does bother you at all, I know you said it's kind of cool how they get the number of the week and deal with it. But if that in any way is annoying you, just please hold on. If you need a jump, if it does get to the point where you're like, I can't keep watching this because I don't like it, let me know. I'll point you to some later season 3 stuff to jump to.
Well, it sounds like you're already hooked, though, aren't you, Kevin?
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. It's not turning me off. I know that at this point in the show, that's what it's going to be. Again, expectations have been very well set by you and Scott and some other folks who've done a good job on social media. I share what I'm watching, and they're like, oh, well, that's good, but, the good stuff's still coming. So I'm willing to keep building the foundation because there are some other characters that are starting to come more to the forefront. I want to make sure I see them integrate with the team. So no, I'm digging it. It's just going to be available time, to be able to do a lot. Now is the good time. I do expect hopefully to be able to get, an ep, maybe 2 a week, during a good part of the summer.
Cool.
I feel kind of like somebody talking to somebody about Farscape and saying, you got to stick through season 1 and season 2 is okay. There's some good stuff in there, but you got to get to season 3.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I've been on the bandwagon and soapbox for, the 100. There we go. To, get through that tougher part of the early thing. So I know I've been on both sides of this, so I'm going to be sticking with it. The other item for me to mention this week, I got a chance to moderate a podcasters roundtable for some iZombie podcasters. Now that season 1 is finished up, you've heard on our show probably the promo for the iZombie podcast with Robin and Steph. I've guest hosted on that podcast once, but so we got them and the 2 hosts together from the iZombie U Zombie podcast and the other iZombie podcast, Kicking Ass and Taking Brains. So we got several of those folks together, just talking about the first season of the show, things they liked, some speculation maybe on some season 2. So if you're really enjoying iZombie and want to hear from some folks who've been talking about it all season long, follow the link in the show notes. About an hour discussion. It was a lot of fun.
Cool. Sounds like a good gathering.
It does, and the excitement about this reminds me of something, a little tidbit that came out of that gaming video with Raul Coley, which was that one of the gamers who's with him, not somebody involved with the show, but one of the fans who was gaming with him, pointed out that his eclectic wife has decided that and it's already aired, the iZombie finale is already aired, but this was recorded before the finale aired, and that she had decided that they are all going to eat cow brains into their meal somehow while they watch the finale, and that just grossed me out.
What, the human people were going to eat brain?
Yeah, real life people watching the iZombie finale were going to eat cow brains as part of the finale night festivities.
Well, I know goat brain is a Turkish thing that people eat, but it's actually bad to eat brain.
I know.
It's got those weird nerves and stuff. You shouldn't be eating it.
Mad cow disease and all that stuff, yeah.
Well, yeah, I didn't even think about that. I was thinking more about just eating that stuff in general. Yeah, don't eat brains, people.
There's the PSA for the day.
Unless you're dead. Well, you got to do what you can do.
Exactly.
Public service. So we're not just entertainment, we're also
We're taking care of you.
public service.
I'm updating our category in iTunes right now.
So that's it for me this week.
I wanted to mention a couple of shows that I've been talking about as their seasons have gone along. First is Penny Dreadful. This was the episode called Little Scorpion, or what I refer to as, the honeymoon at the Cutwife house. Things pick up right after Vanessa has been overcome, shall we say, by the three witches at Dorian Gray's party, and she's so freaked out that she decides she needs to go back to the house that she inherited, and Ethan goes with her. She also tells Dr. Frankenstein where they're going, because she says, he is the one that she trusts, just in case, but the implication is by the end of the episode that they're leaving, so I don't expect that they'll be at that house again the next time we see the next episode. I'm definitely a shipper of Vanessa and Ethan, and this was sort of the perfect shippy episode for them because they're so messed up, right? Because of his werewolf problem and her demon problem, that there's a lot of sweet moments as they're sort of getting to know each other. There's some humor, and then of course it gets really weird, and it also gets really real in terms of their negative emotions, and they don't hook up because it's probably too dangerous for them to do that, which I think is also wonderful about this relationship because it's kind of doomed, or it's going to have a horrible blowback if they do get together at some point. So I like that. I thought there was some really good drama there, especially once the landowner calls out Vanessa, and they're both grappling with what to do to take him out. And it turns out she uses the book that the Cutwife told her, once you use this book, there's no going back. And I liked that Ethan was sort of like, well, I'm already at the point of no return, and now you're going there too. The other big movement story-wise was Lily. She's spending more time with Dorian Gray, which is giving Dr. Frankenstein some jealous fits. But Dorian Gray takes her to the Wax Museum, and Mr. Clare sees her there. And, I would say hanging out with Dorian Gray is a bad influence because she goes off and I guess is calling back on her life as a whore. She picks up this random guy and kills him. And, she's turning into a monster, which is kind of interesting and not really a turn I expected. So I'm liking that. And I'm also still liking Mr. Lyle. He keeps getting more interesting as the story goes along as to him sort of taking sides and actually making a stand to help Vanessa eventually.
Yeah, there was I did enjoy it. Billy Piper's character, that strangling the guy that she was having sex with. Yeah, that one, I didn't see that one coming, but I guess it makes sense because Frankenstein's creatures are all supposed to be slightly defective in that regard. They're all kind of killers. The Vanessa Ethan stuff, I loved it. I shipped them too. I think they're great chemistry. And so when they finally did kiss, I was like, yes. But then, of course, she had to stop it and say, we're horrible together. We're nothing good this way comes, sort of thing. And so I was a little disappointed about that. But I was also fascinated to hear, I think it was the professor back at the house talking about some sort of legends about the scorpion and the wolf protecting the scorpion. And then she's got the nickname of the scorpion, and he is a wolf, and how he is really her protector. And he's supposed to keep her from the forces of darkness. However, when he's going to use his guns to kill the landowner, and she uses the black magic to get the dogs to kill the landowner, he gets very upset because he realizes what she's done. He may not know all the implications of it, but he does confront her about at least the darkness of killing somebody and what that means to her, and how he really wishes she hadn't done that and left it to him. But good stuff.
Yeah, it had the good creepiness factor, right down to spending the time there at the cottage. And the other guy who had threatened her so badly the last time she was out there and helped, get the folks together when they took out her mentor. It was very weird and satisfying to see him get a horrible end. That certainly stuck with me and made me appreciate the power that she has and how dark she can go. Was well done. And yeah, the other big thing, as you both mentioned, the Billy Piper character turning and killing that guy, like, oh, goodness, this could get really ugly from a point of view of, like you said, being the creature. We keep forgetting, or at least I do, since they've been so sweet together with Dr. Frankenstein, that, yeah, she was resurrected. So what's to say what's running through her head and everything else that's going on there? So that could really create some problems for our collection of heroes. So interesting stuff. Still enjoying it. Still digging it.
She could really unravel a lot of things on, from Frankenstein and Mr. Clare to back to Ethan, right? Because she knows who he is, and depending on what she remembers or how this stuff happens, it could be bad news for a lot of people, not just Dr. Frankenstein, that his cousin isn't that into him. But some good stuff. They keep talking about Lupus Day, God's dog is protecting her. So I keep hoping that that's true, that it's him. That's sort of the implication. But to me, it was almost the fact that she did use the black magic and she killed the guy. It almost did put them at the same level now. So in the past, I think he was sort of holding back from her because he's like, I'm a murderer, I'm a terrible person. And he's like, yeah, you're a terrible person now too. So I don't know. I think in some ways it could have cleared a barrier for their relationship. But we shall see. The other supernatural show I wanted to talk about was Salem, because we're getting very close to the season finale. And this was, I'll call it the exorcism episode, where Cotton and John Alden try to exorcise little John Alden. That was, it went the way I expected, which was, I think it didn't really work. They just sort of faked it that it worked. I really liked at the end, though, when the Countess appears to Cotton Mather, because Cotton had been trying to run away with little John Alden, while John Alden was trying to hold back her forces. And the implication to me was that the Countess probably glamored herself to look like Anne to get the kid. Although I'll be curious if Anne does have the kid, what she does with him. The other parts were less interesting to me because it was more set up of Mary sort of strategizing. There was some really good stuff with Isaac, though, coming to the church and calling everyone out as hypocrites. It was very disturbing to see him bring a dead body into the church and have nobody react to it. They were all reacting to what he was saying, which was about, the complicity of everyone in the town with all the stuff that's been going on. And both he and Mary end up in the stocks in this episode, but I guess Mary just had to stay for a day or two because by the end of the episode, she's gone. And she may or may not be getting some help from Anne to also resolve this little John Alden is possessed storyline and getting him back. The one thing I like that they keep setting up is the notion that Mary cares about her son more than her own life or her own ambitions, and the Countess does not care about her son that much. And, Mary keeps sort of hitting that button, so we'll see what happens with the son, if he can be convinced to turn on his mother or what actually happens there.
Yeah, and he's still, the son still has a crush on Mary, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, you're right. I loved how Mary was able to, or willing to, sacrifice her life if necessary, to get her son to safety and to rid him of his possession. I had no hint that the Anne that accepted the son in the woods was not Anne. I didn't think that was the Countess at all. I think it really is Anne. And my thought when that was happening was, this is going to be pretty cool, because we know all along that Anne is something special. She's not just a typical witch. She's very powerful. I love the scene earlier. I don't think it was this episode. It was the one before where the Countess's son, went to confront Anne, and Anne basically just lashed out at him and pushed the magic back, and seemingly, took control of the situation and was more powerful than him. And he's supposedly an ancient witch as well. He's been around for a century or two as well. So that's pretty potent stuff. So if the boy is in the protection of Anne, I think we're in for some pretty cool fighting. And if anybody can take down the Countess, I think it's going to be Anne with somebody else. I mean, she's so inexperienced, though. She needs her help. And how cute is it, all those scenes with her and her familiar mouse? I thought those scenes are always great, especially how many times she has to kill the damn mouse, and then the mouse keeps coming back because she needs the mouse's blood for things. Yeah, it was pretty potent stuff. The exorcism did not seem to work. Well, it's kind of seemed to work, and then kind of didn't seem to work. And then, of course, the burning of the original body of the Countess. I'm a little unclear on this one, and maybe, Wendy, you can clarify for me. Were they successful in destroying the body? Is she now vulnerable, or did they put out the fire in time, or whatever they did?
My interpretation was she put out the fire in time, and she has possession of her body back, so she seems to be intact, was the way I read that.
Okay.
The reason I think it's not Anne is because they were showing a bracelet on her arm, and I think that's a bracelet that the Countess wears. That's why I was thinking it wasn't really her. Because she, smelled the kid and ran off into the woods was the other reason. And I was like, why would Anne be even coming here? So that's why I don't necessarily believe that's really Anne.
Well, just before that, Anne was talking to Mary or somebody and learned that Cotton had gone off into the woods to exorcise the kid. She had finally learned what was going on. So I thought that was her running out in the woods trying to find him.
Oh, okay. Like I said, I think it could go either way. I really was sort of like, what's the implication here? I still think the kid has the demon, though, when he said, almost all of the wasps have stopped stinging me. And, maybe it's asleep, but I think he's still got enough of that demon in him. So I was talking with a friend of mine because, the doctor got thrown in the pit and it was like, what? That's it? That's the end of this guy? And both of us are hoping that he's going to come back from the pit somehow as something, as part of the whole culmination of this story. Because otherwise, his storyline seemed to end very abruptly. But do you just think he's dead and gone?
No, I think he's coming back, because especially when the son of the Countess said the line of something like, for the first time since Dante, you can enter hell as a living man, or something like that. So I had this feeling that he's going to come back somehow.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I'm virtually nodding over here. Not much to add.
I think you would like this show, actually.
I think he would too. I don't think he would like the first half of season 1, but I think he would like the second half of season 1 and all of season 2. I think he really would like it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like Vampire Diaries on steroids, the good Vampire Diaries that we all loved in the beginning.
Okay, now that's a very glowing compliment, yes.
Yeah, it really is. I think that's a good comparison, Brent. So I want to move on to something Kevin is watching, which is Continuum. We're doing our rewatch, and we're on episode 9 of season 3, Minute of Silence. I think of this as the Introduce John Doe episode, where we get to meet a guy in the hospital who wakes up without any memory, played by Ryan Robbins, who I think of from Sanctuary. He's also in Falling Skies. And the only thing he knows is the name Kira Cameron, and I like how he calls her Kira Cameron as he keeps running into her over and over. So we have this guy, we don't know what he knows, slowly starts to work with Kira, who starts to help him, and they find he's got a dog tag of some nature, which points them to some coordinates, some GPS coordinates, and they end up in a park, which the first time around didn't mean anything to me, but the second time around I immediately recognized that was the place he actually arrived at, and also is the place that's very important to the season finale of season 3. I also like that he's kind of flirting with her, and Kira is sort of receptive to it, which we rarely see in this show, and I liked it. we also have more stuff happening on the Alec Pyron side, as well as Kellogg trying to bring a lawsuit against him, ultimately to become one of his partners. And there was a cool little moment where I don't know the woman's name, the assistant, but she's talking about how no one understands your vision, telling that to Alec, and Jason's like, I do, I understand the vision. I like that character a lot. For a guy who's older than Alec, he plays a son, and also sort of a young, naive son, possibly crazy, really well. I like that a lot. But the best part for me, like I said, was really the John Doe stuff that was going on. And then also the tension between Kira and Alec. And Carlos sort of on the fence, because he kind of views this Kira as not his Kira. He views the dead Kira as sort of his Kira. And at the end, we see that Alec goes and drills into dead Kira's brain and steals, the part of her brain that was connected to her CMR. So, the problem with the trust continues, and, having it in many directions. They still got trust issues with Dylan. The fallout from Garza's death has Carlos willing to talk to Lucas and, to try to find out who killed Betty. So there was a lot of cool threads in this one.
Brad. I'm so excited. Four more episodes this season. We're almost there. And it's like a roller coaster now. Once they introduce Brad, the John Doe, it just starts going crazy at this point. And I'm just so excited for the next 4 episodes. And you threw me there for a second, Wendy, when you were talking about Betty's death, and you said the death of Garza. And I'm like, what? Wait,
did I say something? Garza? I didn't mean to say Garza.
But that's cool. I knew what you meant. As soon as you said Carlos was reacting, I'm like, oh, she means Betty. The stuff with Kellogg and the whole play, that pays off towards the end too. So everybody has to pay attention to what's going on there with him getting bought out basically and becoming part of the company. The drilling into the head though, Alec, I wish he hadn't done that. And then of course Carlos discovering the body's gone and pissed off and really upset because that's his drinking buddy, and his drinking buddy's gone now. Frozen dead Cameron was his drinking buddy, and she's gone. But he's obviously going to try to figure out what happened to that, and probably the first thing he's going to do is contact Alec. So, that's pretty scary stuff. But I'm just personally so excited that Brad is in. Now, this episode also features, if you've watched the behind the scenes or listened to the commentary, this is a very interesting episode because there was actually a whole B story going on in this episode, or C story, I guess, if you will. A whole nother story with the thieves, the parkour guys, and the ones stealing all the equipment. And there were far more scenes with them, but they had to cut them all out. And they kind of filmed a new scene between Dylan and Carlos in the police station to kind of tie the things together so that they could actually kind of make it make sense. But these guys stealing the stuff had really nothing to do with what they ended up being doing in this story, because they had to really radically change the story to fit it for time, I think. I can't remember the exact reason for it, but they had to cut out a whole bunch of stuff. So it's a very interesting episode.
Yeah, and it's funny, I recall that we had talked about that way back, that this was the case, because this episode was written by the showrunner, Simon Barry, and how they literally realized once they had kind of put it together, we need to completely flip it, the A and B story, because we have much more important things to do, and therefore we have to find a way to tie it together and put a lot on the cutting room floor. But yeah, it's milestone time for a lot here, because Brad is becoming Brad, or John Doe is becoming Brad, I should say, as he's getting little bits of info right down to and I think I might have missed a good part of this on the first watch when they have the fight, and he has to defend himself and Kira. And, he's been limping, and all of a sudden he doesn't have his limp. And Kira is realizing the whole bit about the nanites or whatever that were given to soldiers in her time, to help. And that's, it was triggered by adrenaline. So that's probably why all of a sudden his limp went away. So even she is really at this point now becoming very suspicious of what when he is likely from. So that's pretty cool on rewatch to see being set up here. And as you said too, Brent, the fact that Alec has been losing key people to the other companies because he's not making the progress on the Halo thing, and that he finds his magic bullet, so to speak, to do it, and that is through going after the device in dead Kira's brain. So he ends up, as we see at the very end, going to the refrigeration unit and starts to cut it out of her. I mean, that is a major step to, what's going to create who he is, this timeline's Alec. So that was very important, creepy, ew type thing, but realizing how far he'd have to go to try to keep his company and the leverage, if you will, or the ability to be ahead of what's going on. So, yeah, the other stuff, the storyline, the theft, yeah, okay, fine. That's just moving those other key bits about what we're going to get to know now about Brad and all. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it says a lot about who this Alec is, that's his play at this point, is to, dissect Kira.
Yeah. And Wendy, you're right. The familiarity almost and affection that we were seeing between Brad and Kira was very it was unusual for Kira. She just doesn't warm to people that quickly, but she was really warming to him for some reason. And I remember the first time I saw this episode, and even now on rewatch, I know why I thought that. First time I saw it, I thought, that's her son as an adult coming through time, right? And the connection they're feeling is because she realizes that's her son, and then of course everybody who's seen the show, that's not what happens.
That's why we call them Brent's crazy theories. Sometimes that's what they are.
Sometimes they are crazy.
It was pretty soon after this episode that I realized that wasn't the case.
Yeah, they definitely had. I mean, when she first meets him, she's just like, you're a case, you're annoying or whatever, but something happens when they go to that crappy apartment he's living in, where she starts to, I don't know, feel some connection to him. And maybe it was when he actually said something like, this place feels familiar, but not the time, or I feel like I'm in the wrong time or something. Maybe that was sort of the initial flip. But she was warming to him for sure.
Because this is also the episode where she finds that little device and has the little video bit of him and his family. There's no question at that moment when she sees that he's obviously from some future time.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to mention was just to give folks an update for our Game of Thrones bonus shows, because we're going to be doing a bonus show to sort of do a season 5 overall wrap up. We're also going to do a couple more to go through a lot of the audio submissions we got for the Small Council contest, because some people had some really intriguing questions and comments. So we'll be doing some of those. And then we'll probably do a couple more about, specific topics, either that come out of wanting to understand different aspects of the story universe or our interpretation of them as well. So there's probably going to be at least 3 bonus shows and maybe a couple more after that.
That's cool. I do enjoy, I'm not, as you yourself pointed out in the most recent episode that went out, I am not the biggest Game of Thrones fan, but I do enjoy listening to you guys talk about the show. You were very enthusiastic about it. Even Jesse.
Well, Jesse's a sad puppy.
He's also a unicorn.
It is a lot of fun because I know when the bonus episodes get released on our feed, because the TIST Twitter account, since I have automatic notifications on my phone, blows up because everybody starts tweeting and retweeting them. So, I love the passion of those folks who are regular contributors with you, but also the listeners who want to just dive in so deep with it. It's kind of, again, Game of Thrones is just kind of okay for me, but when you get a season finale and as much happens as happened here, it's like, oh my goodness, there's going to be lots to talk about.
Yeah, we had a lot to talk about. That's why we had to break it into 2 parts, and there's a lot more to talk about. So I'm very excited that the Small Council wants to get together to do a little bit more. And I've actually found a couple of really interesting YouTube channels of fans. One of them is about sort of interpreting history and how it relates, because George Martin has stated many times how he was inspired by real history and mostly medieval times, and specifically the War of the Roses. So I'm pretty sure we're going to be doing a discussion about that. We're also going to be doing one about the religions, which was one of the questions we had as one of the submissions. So more good stuff coming for that, even though we're taking a break for the main show next week. So with that, I think we're ready to wrap things up. Before we go, I want to thank everyone for listening and thank Kevin and Brent. We'll see you again soon.
Catch you next time.
Have a great week or two, everybody.
If you'd like to contact Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, we offer a variety of feedback options, including email at feedback@tuningintoscifitv.com, voicemail at 206-202-4182, Skype voicemail at Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, or you can visit our blog and forums at tuningintoscifitv.com. And finally, you can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/tuningintosci-fi or at Facebook by following the link on our website. Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV was hosted by Kevin Batchelder, Wendy Hembrock, and Brent Barrett. The theme music for Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV is by Beatnik Turtle. Used with permission. Listen to Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV on Stitcher Radio on Demand. Download the free app today at Stitcher.com. You've been listening to the Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Last Call for episode 342, recorded June 20th, 2015.